But hey, today we have a very special guest, potentially one of our most anticipated guests, because in my close circle, there's quite a few people that share in the sacrament of the blessing of what is rye. So, hey, Rye, how you doing?
Hi, I'm great, Colton and Dylan. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Thanks
Yeah,
for
it's a
being
pleasure.
on here. So, Rye, how do you describe what you do?
Yeah, great question. So, right now I'm going with microdosing guide. I am a board certified health coach by training and the last decade of work, and I'm a certified breathwork facilitator as well. So I carry a few titles, but all of those things have really wrapped themselves up to being a guide for people, being a few steps ahead of where most people are coming to me for support. There's no shortage of depression, anxiety, symptoms of PTSD, and people who are just looking to optimize. And so, by guiding them through the microdosing process, I'm very specifically use psilocybin mushrooms, and I have a real affinity for that plant. I've been able to build a really beautiful practice, over 100 clients at this point that are successfully microdosing with my guidance.
That's pretty impressive, to say the
Thanks.
least, huh?
It's really fun. I have to say, I mean, 10 years as a health coach, there's like such incremental change that happens when somebody changes their food or starts drinking more water or starts exercising. And not to poo poo any of those things, certainly taking care of our bodies is a huge part of our success as humans, but really, really unsatisfying in terms of someone being able to come back and say, like, stuff is shifting. I feel everything changing. My life suddenly has more meaning. And now being in microdosing and breath work, which I would put up there with psychedelics as like so groundbreakingly effective for shifting someone's state, it's just fun to go to work every day and to check in with people and to, you know, be part of their transformation.
It hasn't been just your journey. You've been really affecting many other people's journeys and being a part of their journeys the whole way through. That's pretty wild.
It is, and it's a big responsibility too, Dylan. I mean, there people become attached to
Mm.
me and to my guidance, and it's really important for me to continue to let someone know that I am not their salvation, right? It's not me doing the work. I might be guiding and I might be, providing what is needed for them to have a successful microdosing experience, but they're doing the work. They're showing up every day, right? They're taking their microdose, they're doing their breath work, and it's not magic. I say it to people all the time. It's not like taking a Xanax or having a drink and your problems go away. It really isn't. Psychedelics reveal. They pull back the curtain. They give us, a glimpse into something that our ego has been hiding from us. And so it's pretty brave work. And I try to let the client know over and over again, it's you doing this work. I'm just holding the mirror.
Yeah, I mean, beautifully said. Especially when it comes to I think about some of the people that I've introduced to psychedelics, and I've been fortunate to introduce a lot of people to psychedelics.
Um,
So it's funny that sometimes they put you in this position of like putting you on a pedestal, like exalting you somehow, especially if it's a virgin experience where you have opened up their eyes to a world they had no idea was right next door the entire time.
yes.
And you got to take your ego out of the equation because it feels really good when they're showering you with praise. And you're like, hey, man, you're the one that decided to pick up that mantle. You're the one that decided to do the work. And it's just an interesting complex that can develop really quickly
Uh,
if
yeah,
someone isn't humble.
well said, very well said. And to be perfectly honest, when I was in this work, I've gotten to meet a lot of guides and shamans specifically, and I will never call myself a shaman or put myself in that position. There's quite a lot of guru energy in the psychedelic world that I find gross, to be totally honest with you. And it's exactly what you were saying, that the glorification of self, and it can happen anywhere. It's not just psychedelics, right? It happens in churches with
Sure.
the leader of the
Hmm.
church, right? We've got to be really careful about that. I am facilitating healing. I am not a healer, right? I'm not doing it. I'm a facilitator of it. So that's the distinction that I try to make with people.
Yeah. And I mean, I think with what you advocate for and ultimately help facilitate, it has a lot of undertones of healing, right? Like no one's really taking or microdosing because they're like, man, I'm trying to get out of my mind, right?
Yeah, right. That's why I say it's brave work, right? It's going to reveal a lot. And if you're taking it, if you're doing this work, if you're dabbling, the difference between recreational use, which is awesome and I have no problem with and I have plenty of experience with and I think is fun,
Sure.
and intentional use or spiritual use really is that part where you set a very clear intention for yourself. It's the difference between, hey, let's just see what happens, right? At throwing it back and show me what it looks like too, or show me what it feels like too, or guide me to seeing more about this. That intention setting part, which has even gotten more popular using the compounds recreationally, is the game changer, is the differentiator, right? This plant has a consciousness. Some people hear me say that and they're like, woo, right? But if you've watched Fantastic Fungi, right, and like
Yeah.
mushrooms have a consciousness, like, and we need to be in communication with the plant if we're using it therapeutically or spiritually, 100%. Otherwise we're abusing the compound, we're abusing the plant. And that's when I hear people coming back to me and saying like, I feel really angry, it's not really working, I'm trying to make it work and it's not working for me, right? And there's this aggressive kind of relationship with the plant, as opposed to taking a moment before you take your microdose, taking a couple deep breaths, connecting with the plant, expressing some gratitude, and then making your ask, right? So show me what it looks like to blank. Show me what it feels like to blank. Show me what the experience of blank would be like for me. And then that's when the magic begins.
So you have people really coming in sometimes that, or they think it's like a Xanax. They'll just pop it and they're like, oh, all my problems are going away, instead of really thinking about like, this isn't that type of medicine.
No way. Yeah. Yeah. 100. Some people do. And I think that's just cultural. I think that's our idea of a drug, whether it's pharmaceutical or natural, right? Okay, this drug is going to make me be different. It's going to take away the problem. And what it does is reveal. And yes, there's some nervous system calm that happens there. It's going to run along the serotonin pathways in the brain. So there's that beautiful lift that happens, that euphoria that happens even with a microdose. Um, but you have to be willing to see. So case in point example of a mom, work with quite a bit of mothers. Motherhood is deeply stressful, even more so if all of your kids at home while you're trying to work during all this COVID stuff. So mom calls me, says this compound is like not for me, right? I'm almost hitting my kids, right? I'm so angry at them, there's all this rage coming up. And so I'm like, let's get on the phone. I said to her immediately, the first thing I say, not how much did you take, none of that. I said, what was your intention? What did you ask the plant for?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I asked the plant to show me everything I've been hiding from myself. Right? Like, whoa, homie. Like like we're like, you have 3 kids under the age of 5, right? So yes, you are rageful right now. So pulling way back, right? And this is primarily what I have to do with people, is help them craft the intention, because it can be too much. You can open too big of a door or a window, even with a microdose. So we pulled all the way back to, show me what it looks like to be in communion with this plant. Show me what it looks like to take a microdose. Like, let's just start there. Let's just dip your toe in, right?
And you were talking about too as well, it kind of culturally, that's kind of what people, a lot of your clients probably come into it. Have you noticed, and I don't know if you've dealt with people from different countries, with America so deep into the pharmaceutical market, we can advertise unlike other countries. Do you find that culturally as well when you deal with clients from around the world, that others look at it differently than Americans do?
Yeah, so really good question. Mostly worked with Canadians, so not terribly different from Americans, but much more open to plant remedies. And I think there's much more access in Canada too. People are far less afraid of seeking out these substances and talking about them than here in the States. But one gentleman from Colombia, very, very open to the medicine, very into it. So yeah, a good question. But I'll get back to you once I work with some people in Eastern Europe and in Western Europe and maybe in Asia too, to give you some perspective.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've noticed from traveling around the world. By the way, Dylan, you turn your mic input down a little bit.
Oh,
I noticed from in different regions in the world where, I mean, so here, like golden teachers are kind of like one of the golden standards for mushrooms, right? But in other regions of the world, I mean, you have totally just different psychedelics altogether. You know, take Haiti for example. When I was there, I was trying my darnest to find some psychedelics. Just I don't know, I just wanted to do them. But that wasn't a part of, you know, I got interested in like several groups that there was something to be found. It could be found on the island, and that was not a thing. They were like, well, that's not a thing here, right?
So they didn't
And
even know what you were
so
talking about.
they did, but they're like, there's such not a market there that it doesn't make sense for them to import it, right?
Wow.
We're really, I guess, to grow it or harvest it, and you know, anything can be found anywhere if you dig hard enough, right? But I do think it's just interesting around the world how many different kinds of compounds. Like we go back to like the Greeks, right? And they're like the elders going up into the thermal baths to speak with the gods and the spirits, where it's like, they're probably just lacing the thermal baths with something, right? For just throwing a little something in there and let's go
Yeah.
get communion with the spirits.
They're just drinking some fermented soma drink. Yeah.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
favorite's
So
the bush that goes on fire, and then they were able to see God, and of course Moses did. I think it was what it was, and it turns out that bush,
burning
in
bush.
that specific area, is filled with psilocybin. Whenever you burn it, you turn like you will be going off into another direction.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I didn't know there were biblical references to psychedelics. I do know, I mean, cannabis and the Bible, like I do know that cannabis was
Oh,
heavily
okay.
represented in biblical times, but I didn't realize that about psychedelics.
The Bible doesn't want you to know that. They want you to believe that
It's
God
not a direct reference. It's a leading theory at best around the burning bush. But
first talked to humans through this bush, but then they investigated the bush in that area, that specific bush they talked
yeah,
about.
I think it's the acacia tree. I
Yeah,
would love
That's
for one of our
awesome.
listeners to fact check me on that.
Acacia
So,
tree.
but you brought up a good point earlier, right? And I wanted to like kind of like circle back on it when talking about the difference between like recreational use and therapeutic use, right? And so, in your mind, like what's the purpose behind either? And
Yeah.
where's the line for someone maybe deciding not to do either?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Right off the bat, my feeling is that recreational is done to take you out of yourself in a lot of ways, like take you away from your experience, and intentional use is taking you deeper into your experience. And that would be the biggest distinction there, and that goes for cannabis or psychedelics. Probably those are the only two, or hemp, the only two. And hemp doesn't have psychoactive, so I wouldn't put it in this category. But yeah, cannabis and psychedelics, mushrooms I can speak to the deepest. Yeah, coming into your experience is part of the intentional use there. And then I'm a big fan of the microdose with both the psychedelic and the cannabis, and I'm someone that has taken some pretty big bong rips for the last 25 years. Like I like to get stoned, but I do.
Yeah,
It's
girl.
so fun. It's so
Where's the
fun.
clap button?
Wait, say that again, Dylan. What did you say?
We have a button where it's like an applause button. That's what I was saying. Look for that one.
I got it going for it. I got it going for it. There it is.
Brilliant.
Well,
Yeah.
when you were talking about too about you enjoy the microdosing to get deeper, which is kind of what opposite of what most people think. They think take more so I could go deeper, but is that because when you go deeper, like you take more and go deeper, you're able to lose your train of thought a lot easier than you would be of like, hey, let's focus on this specific thing, and to do that in a creative way, microdosing is kind of the route to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think you're touching on something important here. It's the appeal of the microdose is that it is taken in real time in your real life, right? So show me what it looks like to lead from love is what I'm working on right now. Like I can event with my family. I can eventually get to love, but I'm not starting with love. I'm starting with bossiness. I'm starting with irritation. I'm starting with all sorts of stuff that my 13-year-old is letting me know very clearly, like, yeah, that's not going to fly with me for the next however many years I live in this house. So I'm really working on, okay, show me what it looks like to lead from love. And I can take a macro dose. I can take a huge dose and go out in the backyard and go camping overnight and get away from everything to have some sort of experience where I can commune with the plant and get some information about leading from love, right? Usually the information is going to be, here's all the ways you're not leading from love. Here's all the things getting in the way of you not leading from love, at least right now, right in the initial stages of this intention that I'm working through over time. With the microdose, though, it's like I take the microdose, I set my intention, and then I go about my day with my family. And it's unbelievable how I'm witnessing my own experience. So that same feeling as if you've meditated for half an hour, right? Or done some breath work where you can be the curious observer to your experience without being so deeply in your triggers and in your body that you're just in your chaos, right? And so I can then witness myself having these exchanges with my son. If there's a little bit of cannabis in there too, it's going to enhance the microdose, right? Cannabis enhances, psychedelics reveal. So the combination of the two is really lovely. In the right doses, right? Too much and you're just blown out, right? It might just be like, it's too much to observe. But with those microdoses, I can be in an exchange with him and literally just be going like, oh, look at what I'm doing. This is so interesting. And look at how he responds when I touch on leading with love, and look at how his body language moves when I'm not leading from love. And so it's that real time thing for me with the microdose. It's happening as my life is happening. And there's so much value there.
No. So you're messing it up. You're supposed to be an unconscious human just running through the programs. Like right there, that was a beautiful moment. I just want to like honor that. It's like, that's when you're peeling back and you're realizing like how many unconscious behaviors we have as humans.
Oh my gosh,
right?
yes, especially in parenting. I mean, with anything, but like with parenting, it's just this fucking regurgitation of how you were parented, even if you hated it, right? It just is a regurgitation of that. So yes, thank you for that recognition. And this for anyone, parent or not. Yes, this is the bravery of the work. This is why it's so hard. This is why you have to be ready, because you are sitting in your shit. You're sitting in your shit, but you get to examine it with a little more love and curiosity. When you are so triggered, when your nervous system is so activated, right? When you're just like want to scream like you're punished and I'm taking your video games away and like all the stuff that I want to do, the reactionary stuff in order to control him or get him to do what I want him to do. Yeah, I mean, they're like, you're right. That's the conditioning.
Yeah. I think like, I don't know, and it's so cool that when you can take a step back. For me personally, when I've been in a great state and taken a hero's dose of whatever it might be, it's almost like it catapults you to another level of possibility and thinking. When I'm in not so great state, like Dylon and I and a couple other buddies went to Tennessee, and I had to hug the earth to make sure I didn't fall off. The plant is sitting there, and it's like it was showing me, it was giving me all the answers. I was just refusing to take them, and that's sometimes that can be really tough medicine to swallow. I was in a relationship I wanted out of, and it's like literally you're sitting in communion with your conscience, and your conscience like, hey, dude, you'll be happy when you do the thing that we've talked about a million times.
Yes.
And that's a tough rip. I don't know if there's something to be said for it being easier when you're microdosing, because you can take action on these thoughts. You can take a step back. And
it's happening in bite sizes too. A macrodose is brilliant. I've had some beautiful spiritual experiences with 4 grams, 5 grams, but there's no words a lot of the time for that. It's just a lot of the sensations and experience of communing with the plant. And then the integration, you might be pointing to the need for deeper integration, Colton, because if the plant is like saying something really loud but you're kind of like not ready or too much, there may need to be more time between doses or less of a dose to allow your body to assimilate. We love to talk about our psychedelic experiences, and a lot of times that's what these integration communities and therapists will offer. Let's talk about it. Let's analyze it. And my feeling is, and my experience has been, you got to get in your body to integrate. Like you getting on the ground and holding the earth, like that was you truly integrating on a cellular level. I tell people after a trip, after a journey, go get a full body massage the next day. Like don't go talk about it. Go work it through your tissues. Let the medicine, and take a little hit of cannabis before your massage, like reactivate all the psychedelic compounds that are still in your body the next day. And then let the healing, energy move through you without having to analyze it, talk about it, and figure it out. Right. That's what we're trying to get away from is just over identification with the mind. And I think some of these people in psychedelic circles can still stay in this heavily intellectualized place. And my feeling is breath work, body work, anything somatic, yoga, whatever you can do, hot Epsom salt baths, that is some integration therapy right there.
How did you come to find yourself beginning this journey? At what point did it tip from? I felt the thread there. I want to pull on, and it's like clearly there's a lot of baked in wisdom in what's coming out right now. Right, these are a lot of thoughts that have been polished, whether through integration work or just in your own in your own experience. And at what point did you go, hey, maybe you don't call it a gift, but maybe you have enough experience and you're like, you know what, I want to do this in a more of a full time capacity. Can you kind of bring us through the genesis of how that came to be?
Yeah. So I've always loved drugs. But I had actually never used a psychedelic until I was 37 years old, 5 years ago. So I always thought, I'd be the girl. I hear the stories, the horror stories, right? Oh, I'll be the girl that takes the LSD and think that there's bugs under my skin and jam pens in my eyeballs and all of that. So I just felt like
Oh yeah.
I'm safer over here with ecstasy and all these wonderful stimulants that just make me feel good. But it
Okay,
wasn't.
so real drugs. I was like, how can you love drugs? But no, real drugs. Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean the hard stuff. Yeah, and that, I was in college in the 90s. Like ecstasy was practically like, vitamin C in 1997 through 1999. It was everywhere. It was everywhere. And so that was always my preference for altering my state. Alcohol never did much for me, and in fact, I became alcohol free 4 years ago, and that was one of the best decisions I could have possibly made for my mental and physical health. And I've always loved cannabis. Long time love affair with cannabis since I first started at 14. So, um, psychedelics were presented to me as a mom with two kids and really in a dark place, like super dark place. I was a health coach. I meditated. I ate healthy. I exercised. I did everything right as far as my training was concerned. And I was really unhappy, really anxious, and really affected after the birth of my second son 5 years ago. And so a girlfriend handed me a spice jar. It said cumin or something, and she had ground up psilocybin mushrooms that a friend had given her, and it was just powdered psilocybin. She handed me the spice jar, and she said, "You need to take a pinch of this every couple of days." And I was like, "Okay, I'll try anything, right?" And it's a microdose, so I won't poke my eyeballs out with a pen if I freak out. And so, literally, the first time I took it, my world went from black and white to color. It was like, oh, like, like I am okay. I felt the serotonin I probably desperately needed after a depleting postpartum experience. And I started to see clearly for the first time in my life. And I thought I was awake. And then psychedelics, right? And so I just started stripping away everything that was not me. It just became so clear. Like, I've got two kids in private school with two cars in this 2,000 square foot house. And all I do all day is drive around and scream at my kids because we're late for everything and pack these lunches that I resent packing. And it just, over the next 2 years, I literally just stripped away everything that wasn't me, everything that wasn't authentically me, until now here I'm in the country. I've taken my children out of the system. We're unschooling, deschooling, homeschooling, nature schooling, and we're all at home all day. I'm healing my body from mold illness, chronic stress, everything that environment bred in me. And the transformation was really profound for a middle-aged woman with kids who just thought I was having the blues. And shortly after starting to microdose, I mean, that container went down really fast. Like, I built up my trust really fast with the microdose. I was like, let's see what this is. Let's see what this is. And I mean, I didn't even own a scale. Like, I knew nothing, right? And so I just kept using bigger and bigger doses until eventually I worked myself up to about 4 grams and was having these larger psychedelic experiences where I really just cry the whole time, like just sob the whole time. And that's when I started really digging into the research about what's actually happening for me on an energetic and spiritual level when I'm using the plant. And it became really clear that there was so much stagnant, stuck energy and emotion that needed to move, and I was not moving in my awake life. I was trying to meditate my way out of uncomfortable feelings instead of walking through the fire and being with the discomfort. So that's where breathwork drew me in eventually too, as a modality that can move a lot of that energy and move the emotion. But yeah, so I was all through this time, I'm working with clients on food, mostly food, very food focused. And my passion for this very quickly started to plummet as I realized, oh, my 10-year obsession with food didn't heal me. It didn't take my problems away. And really, for most of the people I was working with, they were dependent on me as a guide, but they were not healing. It was a dysfunctional relationship in a lot of ways. It was continuing to take their money and give them guidance, but I wasn't satisfied with the results they were getting, and neither were they. And so I just tentatively, started offering to some of these longtime clients, I've got this compound, and I'd like to share it with you. And as soon as I started to see that others were having these profound experiences, we're talking about women in their 60s who'd never even smoked weed. So like, this is not just a bunch of people like, this will be fun. Like, these are professional people, engineers, people in the professional world who are curious. And it's certainly in the consciousness of everyone on the planet right now. I mean, Michael Pollan's gone from publishing a book about nutrition to publishing a book about psychedelics. Like, there's a big shift happening here for us. And yeah, we started to experiment. And then my husband, who'd been on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications for 25 years, we used psilocybin to help wean him off of those medications, which were not helping him. And he's had an incredibly successful story here, almost at 50 years old, coming off of all of those compounds that had numbed him and dulled him and wore him down, and just he had no access to his emotions anymore. And he's really come to life. And so as a couple, people saying to us, like, what the heck did you guys do? You're alive, you're vibrant. And yeah, there's a lot of things that we do, but I would credit psychedelics and breath work as the transformational pieces for us.
Wow. I look at a coach like yourself of almost what you were talking about, how your husband had the antidepressants for 25 years, right? And the doctor prescribes that to numb the pain. And it's almost like when you go to the doctor and then the doctor's like, hey, you're obese, here's some diet pills, right? Here's a way to numb the system. Instead, the proper route would be, hey, you should probably go get a coach that's going to teach you how to lose weight, what you need to do. And it seems like we're finally starting to break down that path, especially, coaches like you who are breaking down that wall of saying, no, there's a better way to do this, right? To really get into a more natural way. And it's just interesting that it's taken so long to get to this point to make that happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. I do think there's more acceptance of the idea that change is uncomfortable. Like, we can't avoid and escape the discomfort of what happens when we grow. Like, don't you remember, like, physically when your body was growing, when you were like 12 and your shins hurt, right? Like, you have those awful growing pains or whatever comes with growth. Like, you must experience discomfort in order to progress and grow. And we're seeing it now with COVID. Our collective fear of death is like astonishing. Like, how can we all escape and run from the potential for discomfort, the potential to be on your deathbed? And yes, of course we want to save lives, but it's astonishing to see how uncomfortable we are with discomfort and what lengths we will go to avoid it. And yeah, psychedelics are, I mean, you've experienced it, Colton, your story of like, I had to hold the earth because what the psychedelics were revealing to me was so uncomfortable. And you got to be ready for that. You really do.
Well, I think like there comes a point when you've had enough doses where me and the earth, we've been homies a couple times, right? And I've had a couple experiences where there's one experience in particular where I could feel this tether to like the earth sac, and I had to be comfortable cutting that. Otherwise, I was just gonna have a really, really uncomfortable trip. And for anyone that's listening to this, if you've done enough trips, you've probably been presented with the same thing where you come to this fork in the road where the medicine gives you a decision, and it's like, are you gonna face your shit and go through the gate, or are you gonna sit here in the waiting room and just sit in your shit, like you're saying, Ryan? And ever since I cut that, it was like a paracord. It was like this parachute of my bullshit. And I cut it and free fell into my own existence. Every trip around, Heroes Dose and more since then has been just more and more effortless. I mean, and I'm talking about some stuff where it's like I've been in little carts going through the gates of Hades. You're like seeing demons and like people want to think that psychedelics are butterflies and rainbows, but when you have like your best friend sliding a knife up your spine, whispering in your ear like, "Hey, it's okay," like this is real stuff that comes up that like somehow is in some corner of your universe that box needs to be open, needs to be poked. For me, it does. For everyone, maybe it doesn't, right? But ever since I cut that cord, you can look at a raven picking the intestines out of a heart that's beating under the sunshine while purple raindrops are glistening on your face and understand this is fucked up. And I don't know what the lesson is here, but I guess I'm gonna figure it out. Like I don't know, you know what I mean? I'm not like, yeah, you're just like, fuck, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. So,
that is so cool that you had that actual experience of visualizing and probably even bringing your hand up to cut a cord, and it produced such a profound shift for you energetically, spiritually, emotionally, that you felt the difference since then. I mean, that's profound.
yeah, well, I mean, it's like it presents its way for everybody differently, right? Like a lot of people will talk about like ayahuasca, there being a guide, a gatekeeper, right? With mushrooms, it can be some kind of internal folding experience. With DMT, some kind of blasting through a matrix of sorts, a kaleidoscoping tunnel. So I think different medicines have different kind of ways of saying, "Hey, here's your edge. Would you like to proceed?" Right?
Yeah. And there's that permission point too. Like when people say to me, even with microdose, I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid of what I'll see, or I'm afraid of what I'll experience. There's not going to be any visuals, and really shouldn't be any psychoactive impact on a microdose. The dose is really meant to be quite subtle. But there are many people who are still even afraid of the nano dose, I'll call it, what one drop, or 100 milligrams, or 10 milligrams even, right? You can when I was making powder and putting it in capsules, just dip in your pinky, like just a little bit of that can even make a difference. So what was the point I was making? Oh, when people say they're afraid, same with breath work, when they're going under for a breath work journey, I really feel this. If you're going in with intention, if you've set that intention, if you connected with the consciousness of the plant, you're not going to be given more than you can handle. You're going to be met with exactly what it is that you're ready for and that you can handle. And it might be scary, but that's part of the work. I mean, you've got to face it. And when I'm very new to guided journey work, to guiding others in macro doses, I think that definitely requires, if you want to be more than just a sitter, and a sitter's a valuable role, but
Yeah.
that's a
God
huge
bless your soul
responsibility.
there.
Yeah, it's huge responsibility to guide someone through that. But the encouragement is to hold their hand and help them face it, help them stand and look at it. You're not running from those the demons. And it's funny, people report all over the world and throughout time, what people report during psychedelic experiences, all very similar. So we know truly that the consciousness of this plant speaks to people in similar ways. But yeah, to face it, to walk through it, to believe that they're capable and ready and brave enough to look at it, look at their trauma, look at their fear, look at their demons.
Seems like you found a commonality comparative to when you were doing food coaching, health coaching. Everyone's gut biome is completely different. However, with this plant, there's a commonality pretty much for everybody that can utilize it. Now, and of course, as Colton and I always say, it's not for everybody, but a good majority of most people, it's for most people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would really agree with that. And I don't think it's for everybody. I've got family members that are like, don't try to convince me. And I'm like, I'm not in the business of trying to convince
You're
anybody.
like sitting down with it. Like, you're gonna take
Yeah, no kidding. Like I saw a video recently. Hold the thought. I think this is kind of funny, where the guy said, "Hey, what is something you thought as a kid that just turned out to be absolutely not true as an adult?" And he was like, "Drugs. No one's trying to feed me drugs." He's like, "If anything, I have to ask for drugs. Like I have to impose. I gotta want to get the drugs." And I'm like, "Yeah, man. That's just the funny thing when people are like, don't try and convince me." It's like, no, you don't understand. What?
it's difficult to
These are
find
mine.
quality stuff.
Yeah. And nobody
It's a
wants to
privilege
share their
kind of thing.
expensive shit with you for free. Yeah.
What's the quote where you get like someone gave a homeless man $5 and a bypasser complained like, oh, he's just gonna spend it on drugs. So you go back to the homeless man, like, tell me where you found drugs for $5 because I want to know.
Good. I like that. So do you guys
Yeah.
see I make I make psilocybin medicine into a tincture. So yes, you can take an actual just small pinch of powder, or you can encapsulate it. There's a lot of ways that you can work with the whole plant. But what I've discovered recently is that I actually use a magical butter machine. You know,
Hey.
yeah, you can not only
Are you
make
serious?
cannabis.
Hold on, Ryan. Did you know about the episode that we just made last week?
No.
Oh wow, we
It's at
had
the
this.
front door.
Oh, we had this one of the chiefs on from the company on on our podcast last week. Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
going to be
gosh.
posted next week.
Great product.
We've been
I'm a
promoting
huge
it.
fan. Huge fan. That's so cool that you guys got somebody from the Magical Butter Machine on, because I think that's an incredible piece of technology. It's such a great piece of machinery. It has a spot in my kitchen and on my cabinet. And yeah, you can not only make cannabis butter with it, but you can put a whole ton of dried psilocybin mushrooms in there. And I extract in a palm-based non-GMO vegetable glycerin, no corn, no soy. It's super clean. I do put a little bit of grain alcohol in just for preservation. We were talking about fungus, and liquid. So just to give it a forever shelf life, a little bit of grain alcohol. And then, yeah, 8 hours later, I'll usually run it through 2 rounds, 16 hours, and then a strain through a really fine mesh sieve. And what I end up with is just a really lovely drop by drop tincture that the benefit here with that is that everyone's dose is different, right? When you're putting stuff in capsules or whatever, you can't quite dial in. Everyone's sweet spot is totally different. So drop by drop, you can titrate yourself up to the dosing schedule of your choice. It's really neat to have it as liquid.
Glenn, we're going to need you to clip that, and we're going to send that.
That guy
That's
should put
super
that.
cool, by the way. I've never seen that, Rye. Like, where was the inspiration for that?
One of my best friends is an herbalist, and it was her straight up her suggestion. She said you should make a tincture. She's a tincture maker, and it was like, what you can do, and even googling it was like, I can't really find that this is a thing. Some
Yeah.
random things on Reddit, where people are talking about it. But yeah, the mushroom extracts beautifully at a low temperature, and then all of the psilocybin magic is in the liquid there. You got to give it a good shake. Some of it can settle to the bottom, but for the most part, it's a really neat way to take your dose discreetly, to be able to travel with the bottle, to be able to throw it in your bag or your purse. And it looks like, any like a serum you can put on your face, or, maybe it's your CBD or something.
Wow.
Yeah,
I have one
What
here.
was the
Take that recipe and make that.
special just for you guys and your listeners. I've revealed my secret there. So yeah, I mean, this stuff needs to be out in the world more. It's so ridiculous how we've got this massive heroin crisis and all these terrible destructive compounds out there that truthfully people are using to escape their pain. And we have something that can help us reconcile our pain. So hopefully our decriminalization really starts to spread beyond just some key cities here, and in the next couple of years maybe we're moving towards some legalization.
I mean, I see it as an inevitability, but
Mhm.
this other thing that comes up for me pretty frequently is that I can't for the life of me understand really why they're illegal. I mean,
Really?
I'm not a big like conspiracy guy, but like it's so confronting the free thinking, creative, one of working class to just keep the machine moving. But you're like, man, there's just so much irrefutable evidence of the benefits outweighing the cons.
Yeah,
That,
for sure. And I think, we've got Johns Hopkins and the Imperial College of London and all of these centers opening up that are studying psychedelics, psilocybin in particular. I mean, and we looks like the FDA is going to be approving MDMA as a treatment for PTSD in the next year or so. I mean, it's been fast tracked for approval. So yes, to some extent we are seeing a lot of excitement around the compounds. But yeah, I'm with you from a conspiracy theory standpoint. I mean, this stuff made me stop following the rules and unplug from the system.
I mean, that is the thing though. Yeah, right. So it's like but for me, what it has done is anything. It's made me want to plug more into the system. right? I mean, and in a way where it's like helping me discover my purpose that creatively really aligns with my highest producing potential, right?
Wow.
And when I think about the realm that we're stepping into, not to go too far off on a tangent here, but it's like, we will be automating more and more, and there will be more and more technology alleviating things. When you just take like driving out of the equation, when you take the workforce of drivers alone, take them off the roads and you automate that, fast food workers, you automate that process. I mean, you're talking about a lot of things where these are very menial tasks that within the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years, it's not far-fetched to think that's going to be eliminated from the workforce. And the only real competitive advantage that a human has over a robot or technology is creativity.
Hmm.
And here's a compound that allows me to essentially tap into my highest creative potential. So as a worker bee, it makes sense to allow, hey, in the short term, you might have some of that rebellious unplug, but I think the long term game is to see people fully actualized. And we all know happier citizens are going to be more aligned, more producing citizens, right? So it's like, it, I don't know. I guess it's easy from the eye level I'm looking at, but I'm not making billions of dollars a year and want people under my thumb. So
And an interesting devil's advocate, right? With that, where the creativity is going to be more prominent for humans in that space. Look at San Francisco, right? Psychedelics is pretty much what made San Francisco thrive and created the creativity to be able to create the technology pretty much all of us use today. That's also taking away the jobs that we're using. So in a way, it's interesting that we could use it for the psychedelics to also be more creative in how we're going to take care of ourselves in the future, but also in a way it created the problem that we're having now in an
Wow.
essence in that specific area.
Ironic, huh? Yeah, when I remember starting to hear that, all of this is like all of Silicon Valley's been microdosing and macrodosing for, however many decades, and then started researching how many billionaires use psychedelics. And I'm like, wow, it's just
It's
phenomenal.
wild.
It's
How,
wild.
yeah.
I mean, it's the
And they
greatest
don't ever
performance
talk about
enhancer we have.
and they don't really talk about it, which makes it even more interesting that that's almost like the hush hush that they keep to themselves because they know their competition will probably get it right, and they don't
Yep.
want them to know that, understand it. It's
Yep.
just it's almost like they all go to Burning Man and then they share their little secrets and then they leave.
Yeah, I will say 90% of the people I'm working with are PTSD, depression, anxiety, ADHD, and OCD, all the letters. But yeah, about 10% of the time, I'll get people who are just straight up super curious about the performance enhancement. One guy right now who's really just trying to avoid Alzheimer's or dementia. He's middle aged, but doesn't want that fate that he saw with his grandparents and now his parents, and so did his research and just using it on the weekends as he practices his guitar and does puzzles and like just uses it to keep his
Interesting.
brain optimized. Yes, fantastic. And it's working really beautifully for him and he appreciates it.
Do you find a lot of people in the finance world? I'm just curious on that. Like
This
it's huge in technology, but
Yeah, this particular guy is finance. No, I know I really attract, I think I attract a lot of people like me. I attract a lot of creatives. I attract entrepreneurs. I attract parents, mothers,
mhm.
and empaths, super sensitive, spiritual folks who are really just struggling to reconcile with the energy of the planet right now.
And that kind of comes down to it's interesting too. Like that's your kind of your specialty and who you're attracting and working with, and then there probably is coaches that specifically deal with entrepreneurs and finance and tech people, and that's just what they're good at and the people they're attracting. And I kind of went through a couple uh, trainers when I was looking for a coach for myself, and it's kind of now I think about that. That's kind of the same reference of like you have to find someone that you're going to connect with and be comfortable with in that scenario.
100% Dylan, and I'm so glad you said that because I mean I say this all the time, and I really believe it. You can't heal if you don't feel safe. Anyone that you partner with for any aspect of your healing, you have to feel really safe, and you have to trust them. whether it's even a personal trainer, a therapist, a coach, whatever it is, that's a really key component for your nervous system and for any aspect of healing. So yeah, I mean, I don't try and sell anybody on working with me either. They have to be a hell yes to me, and I have to be a hell yes to them, and all around. Otherwise, I've learned that lesson the hard way over and over again. If there's some sort of like, maybe this isn't quite right, it doesn't work out, something goes wrong, like the product gets lost, like, right, it just doesn't work. So there has to be that match there and that safety in place for sure.
As a coach started out, was there a couple things that you learned off the bat, like that's not working, in this scenario? We've been kind of talking about how blessed this is and how wonderful it is, but like, what are a couple scenarios that might have come up where you're like, that probably wasn't a good scenario?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So a lot of times it's so interesting. There are people who want to heal initially, and then they push away the solutions. They delay. I mean, they will get their microdose, and we will start our exchange and our agreement, and then they will not use it. They will push it away. It's not time. It's not the perfect time. I'm not ready. It has to be the perfect day. There's actually quite a bit of that happens. And we're talking about people with PTSD and OCD. So we're working through, a lot of layers of their trauma. But yeah, there's a resistance that some people have. And I think these people are the, like, I just want a magic pill people in a lot of ways, right? And once there is this exchange and I send them my videos and we have a consult, like, and I let them know this is a revealing compound, some people just become afraid. And so I've gotten better at screening that and letting people know, like, please don't say yes if you're not a hell yes, right? I don't want that. Don't send me your money. And yeah, I've learned the way around that. I don't think there have been any like disastrous scenarios. I certainly, I'm cautious about people. I used to actually just straight up ask people when I got on the phone, like, are you a narc? Like, and people get like, oh. But no, so far, I mean, I've had a really overwhelmingly positive experience helping people with this. There really is so many people who want to microdose and just don't know how and need some guidance. So even just schedules alone, people get so overwhelmed, like, okay, I've found some to work with, but I don't know when to take it and I don't know how much. So I really do help break that down and simplify it for people. It is going to be different for everyone. I'm a big fan of the Stamets schedule of 5 days on and 2 days off. I followed the oh gosh, what's his Fadiman schedule of 1 day on and 2 day off for years. It was the first few years I did it, and great schedule, really good having those 2 days in between to notice. I call them the contrast days. Like, okay, that was my on day. Now what's in the contrast here? The more curious you are, of course, with the subtle shifts that happen, the more you're going to get from the experience. But for people who are really struggling with their mental and emotional health, that 5 days on is such a beautiful boost serotonin wise, and helps them feel more on top of things. That it's been a very successful schedule for many folks, myself included.
Yeah, I would say you've been beaming the whole time. Like that's just the thing that I think from being in this space and just attached to seeing what's possible is that it can be really easy to like over encourage people, where you're like, come look at the truth, versus understanding like, hey, everybody has a different belief. My belief is that we are all our own individual slice of the collective consciousness, right? So like, hey, my slice might not be your slice,
I like that.
I'm feeling like my slice is pretty fucking cool, and I really want a lot of people to check it out. It's like I feel for people, but everybody's gonna have their own experience, and I think microdosing is a beautiful way to get introduced to the ladder of work that's available. Now, I will say on the opposite end of the spectrum, I don't know that it would have served me the right way.
How? Tell me more about that. That's interesting.
Well, so like I use psychedelics therapeutically. Thinking in the beginning I was going after recreational, but the first trip I did, I was the one that kind of pushed the issue in my friend group, and me and my buddy Evan, I was 17, and I was about to go off to college, and it was one of those times where I was like, man, let's check it out. And it's kind of like rebel, whatever. And I had a tough childhood. And first trip I did, I was like, oh, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff coming up here. And the second trip, same thing. And these are 2 hits, so like what, 100 UGs of LSD. So, pretty solid, a bit past your minimum effective dose. And um, I don't know that I would have wanted to ease into it, I think I might just belong to the smaller group where it does serve to be in the more the all in or not type of pool. So
I
I
respect
think
that.
there's a lot to be said for the ramp.
You needed that, and you knew you needed that in some way. And it's important to say here, it isn't one or the other. And people do really get like that. Am I a macrodose person or a microdose person? I think the two together are tremendous. That the macrodose and then carrying that same intention and the same work that you did with the macrodose for the next couple of months with a micro as you integrate, bringing that intention back every time you take your microdose to allow the integration to carry through. I think together there can be really valuable as well. That's how I use it, at least. And I always know, like, I'm maxed out on microdosing. It's been 6-8 weeks or whatever. I need a slightly bigger dose here, even if it's 1 gram or 2 grams, because I'm not quite getting at that like underlying irritation there. But yeah, and I have many clients who will never do a journey, who would never trip. Like that's just like so outrageous to them and out there. It was enough to get them to do, a teeny tiny microdose, and it works just fine for them. So yeah, I mean, you knew what you needed and you still do. That's beautiful.
Well, that's the tough part, is listening to that whisper, isn't it? I've had enough people contact me about the ayahuasca, which Dylon, we have some updates around that. We'll talk about that after. But where people reach out and they're like, oh man, like I don't know if I want to do this or not. I personally rather put up the barrier of like, fuck yes or fuck no. Like it's a bit of a whisper, life, isn't it? Where your intuition whispers, and the more you listen to the whisper, the louder the whisper gets, until eventually, at certain rhythms in life, you can feel like your whisper of intuition is constantly screaming. Whether it's, hey, I should foreign city go down this road, and you end up discovering this spontaneous band that's playing, and it's the highlight of your trip, or et cetera, et cetera. I think it's the same thing with plant medicines. If you listen to the whisper, you'll be called into what feels right for you. And I saw that with ayahuasca. I saw people there that hadn't done any psychedelics, and I was like, "And you're going onto the fucking mothership? Like, you this is first step for you, huh? Like straight into Mars? Like that's where you want to head?" I'm like, "What?"
Wow. Yeah,
but served them really well.
Yes, and what you're touching on for me is intuition. Whether it's the whisper from the plant, your own whisper, or the communion of both of those things together. I think psychedelics, especially microdosing for someone who's hesitant to go into a bigger experience, can really help us strip away what's in the way of that clear voice, right? So many of us are seeking outside of us for an answer. What's the right thing? What do I need to do? Let me consult a whole bunch of people. There must be signs out there for me that will guide my way. And the beauty of the psychedelic really is that, like, drop into your internal knowing, your wisdom, your heart space, your third eye, all of it. And to be guided by your higher self is absolutely priceless. I mean, that's why I'm here, to tap into that place and to serve from that place. And so, yeah, that's the magic for me.
Hey, Ryan, what's your purpose for being here?
Oh my gosh, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that.
Careful, you are married. I mean,
yeah, this is a juicy question, Colton. What is my purpose? I think I was just touching on it in that answer. It's to fully experience my own stuff, be on my own journey, and then to share and guide based on what gifts I've been given and what I've been shown. And my purpose is to experience myself on this planet, to experience the spectrum of human emotions, not just the good ones, not just always reaching for the happiness, but really all of it, the whole experience. My purpose is to raise boys into men who are, going to be change makers in our world. That's needed. And Yeah, it's a great question here in my early 40s. I am examining like what do I want for the second half, or yeah, maybe I'll live till 80, maybe I'll live till 180, who the fuck knows. But like what do I want? What do I want? I certainly would love more fun and more joy. That was not very present in my first 42 years. But yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm going to have to do a journey and journal on it.
Sure. Yeah, no, I did. I felt that come out a little bit though, where it's when we talk about like our higher self and guidance. I mean, it's easy to get caught up on hitting our sales quotas, our projections, or what our partner needs, and saving that 401k, and at the end of the day, forgetting that none of that shit matters,
Nope. Really doesn't. It
right?
really doesn't. It's so freeing. For me, there's a lot of my work is tied into nature. When you talk about holding the earth, that's like a daily practice for me. Sitting on a tree,
By the
put
way,
my
you
back
keep
up against.
referencing that just so you know, like the Earth is cool and all. I could not have been hugging more poison ivy. Okay, so like this whole
Just
idea of
wondering when
like
that's coming up.
Mother Earth has always got your back. Okay, so you could not farm thicker poison ivy per square fucking
I was
inch.
I was
Okay,
also on another universe, and I walk over and they're hugging the ground, and I was like, "That's all poison ivy you're laying in." They're like, "I don't care what it is. I'm hugging the earth," and I'm like, "I'm gonna go sit in the stream over here."
What? Did you freak
so
out? Did you
you
get
just
sick?
keep coming back to it, and I just for everyone listening, it's like yeah, it's cool, but heads
Oh,
Funny.
that's
up.
funny.
Turns out I'm not allergic. Just so you know, I'm not
Okay,
allergic.
good. Yeah,
I found
nature.
that out.
That's all
Nature is
that was.
spiky. Yeah, plants are spiky. Plants can be very harsh. I mean, they have incredible medicinal properties, but yeah, plants can
Plants
hurt
have a
too.
lot of jokers in this world.
You sure
I'm
do.
glad you're
I found it.
okay.
Oh no, it was great. I didn't mean to interrupt your thought. I just think it's really cute when we're like, man, I love nature. Hug a tree, and the tree's like, yeah, hug me, man, hug me.
It's fine. It's great. Watch what happens later.
Yeah, right.
Left you a
That's
little
amazing.
present on your skin there.
Yeah, give it about 6 hours.
So, I mean, I guess and kind of closing out here, right? Like if someone was interested in picking your brain, wanting to connect with you, like what's the appropriate channel for them to maybe seek you out and lean into your guidance, your wisdom?
Sure. So my website is my full name, RyannaBattiste.com. I'll send you whatever links you guys include in your show notes. And on that site, you can read a little bit more about me. You can schedule a free, no pressure consultation. I will give 15 minutes of my time to anybody interested. And I've had plenty of people who just kind of want to pick my brain about, their own dosage and their own experience. And it's great. That's, my contract with the plant is to share as freely as I can in that way, and it comes back around. You can also sign up to do some breath work with me. The combination of the microdosing plus the breath work is really, I find, deeply effective for really repatterning. Right, so the microdose kind of reorganizes those network connections around the brain, and then the breath is that somatic piece, that integration piece that I was talking about earlier, that actually allows the stuck, stagnant energy to move out of the body, so that this part can be effective and can take hold. So all of that on my website there, and then I'm on Instagram quite a bit until I can find a platform that's not censored and ridiculous. Instagram serves the purpose. So spend a lot of time on stories. I'm really try to be as
What's your
honest and
handle?
Ryanna Battiste. It's my name. So it's not the easiest one. RyannaBattiste on both the website and on Instagram. And yeah, it's important for me to be as transparent as possible in my work. I never want guru energy. I never want to come across as someone that knows more about someone than they know about themselves. And I'm honest about my own shit, how hard it is to have kids and to have a business and to exist in this world, my highs and my lows. And then I really do, back to the nature for one more second, I encourage people really heavily to lean into nature as they're healing. people, the people I'm working with who are the deepest in the trenches with in their darkness are oftentimes spending very little time outside. There's so much time indoors, and the consequences of that, being under the fluorescent lights and having no contact with the earth. I mean, you can't even go buy earth if you don't want to go outside because it's too hot or too cold. Like, buy an earthing mat, right? There's like, we need that electromagnetic connection to the earth. It's critical. It's what we're supposed to be doing all the time. And we have literally raised ourselves up, off, and away from it, our tires, our shoes, our concrete foundations. And so wherever and whenever I can help people to access nature, eventually I'd love to get people out here. I built a house in the middle of a 100-acre pine forest. So just like literally just taking off all your clothes and standing in the middle of pine trees in a pine forest, like the quality of the air in a pine forest is extraordinary and so deeply healing. So
Count me in
yeah.
on that one.
He's into it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think you have two weirdos that would be like the front of the line right
That was
here.
pretty much our entire Tennessee trip. So
Yeah.
Great. You guys are down with the earthing. Yeah, and you can feel it. I mean, especially when there's plant medicine involved too, right? Of course, like the pulsation of the trees and looking at the moon. Like, when someone's like, I had a really bad trip. I was in this like crappy apartment when I tripped. I'm like, yeah, no wonder. Like,
Dude, apartments suck ass to trip in. That's like 101, do not do.
go hop on a bike. Get outside.
You feel like a lab rat. You feel like some kind of experiment lab rat where God's going to pluck you out of the house at any moment and use you for some fucked up cheese wheel shit.
Creative thing I have in here.
Yes. Okay, good. So outdoors. Yeah. And my hammock is my favorite piece of integration as well. During a journey, after journey, on a microdosing day with a little bit of cannabis in my system, getting in a hammock and rocking and feeling that sensation of rocking while outside and looking up at the trees, the stars, the sun, the moon. That is some deep, totally fucking free healing that's available to all of us. And we love to overcomplicate it. People love to say like, well, I'm sure my answer has to be bigger than just taking some deep breaths and going outside. And it's like, there's a whole lot to be said for taking some deep breaths, going outside, and using a little bit of plant medicine to heal whatever ails you. Doesn't matter. So that's my platform: plant medicine, breath work, and nature.
I think the big theme from all of this is like, hey, if you guys are listening to this, like, take care of yourself. Take care of the people you love, but most importantly, show yourself some love. Whether it's just getting outside today. To tomorrow, the day after. I know old Ham Dog and I, we're going to go hit a trail. Dylan, you'll appreciate this. We're going to go do some rugged camping for 2 nights. So got some new boots last night. They say nature's free, but I somehow spent $400 at REI last night. So that's cool.
It'll be the best purchase you made. I tell you what.
Good for you.
Yeah. Well, hey, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Sincerely. I really, really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Guys, if you have any questions and you can't get a hold of her, reach out to us. We'll direct you to her. Any parting thoughts, guys? Oh, Magical Butter. We're going to honor the giveaway through this episode. How about that?
Yeah.
Dylan, does that sound fair?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right, cool. So if you would like an opportunity to win your own machine for free, again, this is sponsored by Magical Butter. Straight to you guys. If you're a listener of Rye, if you're a follower of hers, just go screenshot wherever you're listening or looking at this thing right here, the words that are coming to you, and just tag Magical Butter and either Dylan at Dylan Whidden or at Colton DM so we can see it, just so you're throwing out the word about what Rye is doing here and spreading this medicine. And for every person you tag, you will get one entry into that giveaway. So thank you guys so much. We are Professional Hippies, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Rye.
You're so fun. You guys are so cool. Thank you.